Hi there, Rayanne with Trailblazer RV here. Today I'm going to take you through a new RV orientation on a Sportsmen SE 301 BHSE. We're going to start here at the front of the unit. Under this cover, you're going to find your propane tanks. Now this unit comes with two 20-pound propane tanks. These tanks have been filled already. Also on here is your auto changeover regulator. So the way this regulator works, you can see currently the sight glass is reading red. Now if I open the bottle that it's selected, that sight glass changes to clear, indicating that there is now propane being able to flow through the system. Now we recommend you open both bottles at the same time. Now what's going to happen here is when this bottle is completely drained, this sight glass is going to turn back to red. However, the system is going to continue to draw off of this bottle. At that point, you can switch the regulator over to this bottle, remove this one and take it to have filled without ever having to shut off the propane to the RV. Behind that, you're going to find your battery. This is a standard 12-volt battery. You'll see on here just two wires to connect the posts. Red is always going to your positive and black is always going to your negative. Important to remember on this battery, there is some maintenance to do. Under these two caps, you're going to find 3 cells under each of these caps. We recommend a couple times a year, pop these caps off and just check the fluid levels inside the battery. Every once in a while, you're going to need to do some maintenance and just top those batteries up with distilled water and then throw a good charge on them just to keep them in good working order. Behind the battery, you're going to find the battery disconnect switch. Right now you can see the switch has been selected to the green, which means the power is flowing to the RV. Whenever you put the unit in storage for a little while, you can switch it to the off position, the red position. What that's going to do is eliminate any of the things in the trailer that constantly draw from the battery to keep your battery from going dead when it's sitting for a few days. In the compartment here, you're going to find a few tools. The first thing you're going to find is your 30 amp power supply cord. This cord will plug into the side of the trailer back there on the twist side. You're just going to push in and turn to lock. It's got a little locking ring on there as well. On this end, it's got the 30 amp plug, so if you have 30 amp supply at the campsite you're at, you can plug in this way. If you don't, if you only have this standard household supply, we have supplied an adapter for you as well that can go on the end of that cord and plug into a standard outlet. Also in this compartment, you're going to find the crank for your stabilizer jacks. Simple to operate that, just put the crank on the jacks, crank the jacks all the way down. But it is important to note these are stabilizing jacks only. They are not to be used for lifting or leveling the trailer. They're only designed to handle so much weight. So once you've leveled the trailer by putting blocks underneath the tires to do the side-to-side leveling, crank the stabilizer jacks down until just tight with the ground rather than trying to level with them. Here's where you're going to find your water hookups. First one is your freshwater tank fill. To fill the fresh tank, you can just go ahead and put your hose inside this connection here and let the water run. We do recommend using a drinking water safe hose. If you're using just a standard garden hose, you may find a off-putting plasticky taste in the water. By using the drinking water safe hose, you're going to eliminate that. Above that is your city water connection. If you are camping somewhere that has water already on site, you can just go ahead and hook your hose up to here and turn the water on. It's going to allow you to bypass the water pump and just run your water through the city connection. If you are hooking up to your city water, we do recommend using a water pressure regulator. The water system in the RV is only rated for about 50 psi of pressure, and you'll often find that different campgrounds have pressure that is higher than that or not stable pressure. What the water pressure regulator is going to do is help keep that flow at a constant rate and protect your water system from leaking. Just below that you are going to find your fresh tank drain valve. Now the fresh tank is empty right now, so we've got it in the open position. When you go to fill your fresh tank, just go ahead and turn that valve so it's closed, and that's going to allow the water to stay in the tank. Same thing to open it, just go ahead or to drain the fresh tank, just go ahead and open that valve and the water will drain out. This is where I was talking about the 30 amp connection to plug in. Again, just push the hose on here, twist to lock, and then you can screw in to hold it in place. Below that is your holding tanks. So here you have a larger 3-inch black holding tank valve and a smaller 1.5-inch gray holding tank valve. Now when dumping the holding tanks, you're going to want to pull the handle for the black tank first, allow that to fully drain, then close the handle and open the one for the gray. What's going to happen when you do that is the water from the gray tank is going to help flush out anything that may be left in this section of pipe or in your drain hose that's going to make cleanup be a little bit messy. Once those are fully drained, again, go ahead and close them, put the cap back on. We have supplied a sewer hose for you. It will be in this back bumper here. This unit does come with a spare tire. However, it is important to note that RVs do not come with a jack or a tire wrench. Often the jack for your truck will be more than enough to lift the RV if you should need to use it. But the tire wrench may or may not be the same size. We recommend that you pick up a star wrench just if you ever do need to use it, so you've got something that will fit your lug nuts on this. Here we have your hot water tank. So in here you're going to notice a couple things. First of all, this is a gas electric water heater, so you have the ability to run it off either propane or electricity. If you are going to be running it off electricity, you're going to need to know where this switch is here. There's a small on-off rocker switch in here. To run it on electricity, this switch does need to be in the on position. We leave it in the off position, and it actually comes with tape over it from the factory that we'll leave on there for now. The function of this is if you ever plug the unit in with that switch on electric, and there's no water in the water heater, it can burn out your electric element. So they put that in there as an extra safety. Down here is this is going to be your sacrificial anode rod. It acts as, first of all, the plug for the water heater. So when you need to drain the water heater, you pull this rod out. But the other function of the sacrificial anode rod is to allow minerals and impurities in the water to eat away at this rod rather than corroding the lining of the tank. When you pull it out, you're going to find a rod about that long. It's going to start to look very corroded and pitted over time. That's perfectly normal. It's performing its proper function. You just need to worry about replacing it when it gets down to anywhere on that rod showing just the center steel pin. It's going to be about the thickness of the ink cartridge in a pen. Another thing to note on here is the pressure relief valve. When you do pull this plug, make sure and relieve the pressure off of the water system. If you don't do that, you're going to get quite the spray coming out of here. So the pressure relief valve is the easiest way to do that. Also in the water heater, you'll notice 2 reset buttons here. I had mentioned before that if the tank gets fired up without water in it, it's going to overheat and burn out the element. It's not going to happen every time, but it is a possibility. Sometimes it will trip this reset before that element gets destroyed. There's also one for propane. So if you ever do happen to fire the water heater without water in it and it's not working, the first thing to check is going to be these 2 resets. The one on the left is for electric and the one on the right is for propane. On this side of the unit, you're also going to find your furnace vent. Nothing really you need to do with this. We just like to point out when it is on the camping side that if the furnace is on, this does get very hot. So make sure if you have any children or anything like that around that they know this is hot, do not touch this. You could burn yourself. Unit has a power awning, easy switch operation for in and out, but nice to note on this one, it is adjustable, and to adjust, you just need to pull one arm down. What that's going to do is tilt one side of the awning so that if it is raining, any water is not going to collect in the awning and cause the fabric to sag. It's going to run off to the one side and keep your awning fabric nice and tight. To adjust back, just push up back into the proper position. Just remember, if you do adjust one side down, make sure the sides are level before you roll the awning back in again. For your running gear, the tires are inflated to 80 psi. It's a good idea to make a good habit of checking that before you go on long trips or anything like that. Also, lug nuts torqued to 100 foot-pounds. If you have the ability to check that with a torque wrench, good idea to check those. If you don't have a torque wrench, just make sure they're nice and snug before you go on a long trip. Also, maintenance point we like to mention on the running gear. The manufacturer recommends that the wheel bearings get repacked every 8,000 to 10,000 kilometers or 2 to 3 years, depending on how you use your RV. So make sure you keep an eye on your wheel bearings as well. Now we can go inside the Sportsmen. Alright, so now that we're inside the Sportsmen, there's a couple things you should be aware of as well. We're going to start back here in the bunk room. This is where you're going to find your converter. This is the main electrical distribution panel for the RV. You're going to notice 12 volt fuses as well as your 110 volt breakers. Note that in an RV it's not uncommon for a fuse to blow. So we recommend keeping a few spares with you just to make sure that if something does blow, you do have access for the power there. Your RV has 15, 20, and 40 amp fuses in it, so not a bad idea to carry a few spares of all of those. The other thing in the converter is there is a cooling fan that may go off. Every once in a while you're going to hear a whirring or a humming from here, similar to what a computer would make. That's perfectly normal whenever there's a high draw in the system, or if the battery is charging, something like that. That cooling fan is going to go on just to make sure those electrical circuits stay cool. Inside the bathroom, you're going to find your monitor panel. So this is going to tell you your battery level, which is currently reading good. You'll only notice it goes to the charge state when the RV is plugged in. Also your fresh tank, which we have seen is empty. Your black tank and gray tank, both currently reading empty. Also in here you're going to find your switch for your water pump and also your 2 switches for your water heater. This one for the electric, keeping in mind that for the electric to work, that switch on the outside also needs to be on. And this one for propane. When we turn on the propane one, you're going to notice this fault light comes on. It's going to come on to indicate whether or not the water heater has lit. When you turn the switch on, it's automatically going to come on. It's going to take about 30 seconds. The water heater will light and the light goes off. As you can see, that's how you know the water heater is running. Next to that is also the GFI outlet. We like to point this out in case you're plugged in, you find yourself not having power to your outlets. In an RV, almost all of your outlets are connected in with this GFI outlet. If you find you're plugged in, don't have power, just come in here and push your reset button. It's going to be very similar to the outlets you have in your home washrooms. For the toilet, we like to point out when using the RV washroom, you always need to use RV safe toilet paper and a proper holding tank chemical. The chemical is going to break down any of the solids, toilet paper, that sort of stuff that gets put in the tank to make the dumping process a little bit easier. The chemical does come in liquid, powder, or tablet form. Doesn't matter which one you use as long as you're using something. Every time you dump the holding tank, just load one charge of the toilet chemical into the toilet. Depress the foot pedal halfway down. That's going to fill the toilet bowl. Once the toilet bowl has filled, you can step on it, flush it down, and that's going to recharge the holding tank for the next use. Down here is your propane carbon monoxide monitor. Now this monitor serves three functions. Number one, it is going to alert you if there is a propane leak, something you'll likely smell as well. It will alert you to a carbon monoxide situation. Not able to smell, but it will give a very clear alarm signal on the detector. And the third and most common time it's going to go off is if the battery in the RV is low. The alert on that is going to be a much slower beep with 10 seconds or so between beeps. Make sure to respect this alarm, of course, but note that often when it's going off, there's not a situation you need to be concerned about. It's just that the battery in the RV is getting low. Unfortunately, there is no way to turn it off. The only way to fix that is to recharge the battery. Here is the thermostat that's going to control both your furnace and your air conditioner. To run the furnace, simply turn it to heat. Turn up the temperature to whichever temperature you choose. It's warm today, so we're going to make it 80 in here. You're going to hear the fan come on. What's going to happen is the fan is going to run through a purge cycle for about 15 to 20 seconds before the burner tries to ignite. Once it's done that purge cycle, you're going to hear a clicking where the burner is trying to ignite. I just heard it ignite there, so now the burner is flowing. It will heat up the system until you reach the temperature that you have selected. When you go to turn the furnace off, simply you can turn it to the off position, but the fan isn't going to go out right away. The burner will immediately extinguish, but the fan is going to run through another purge cycle for another 30 seconds to a minute, which is perfectly normal. So nothing to worry about there if the fan is continuing to run after you've turned the furnace off. To run the air conditioner, I can't run it today because we're not plugged in, but you would just switch over to the cool section, and again, select your temperature to whatever temperature you want it to be running at. We like to leave the fan mode here in auto whenever you're running on your air conditioner or your furnace. If you've selected it to high, on, or low, if you put it to the on mode in high or low, what's going to happen is the fan in the air conditioner is going to run continually. You could use that mode for air circulation or something like that, but it's not giving any additional cooling or anything like that to be on high versus low. The fan in the air conditioner actually only has one speed. Your fridge also runs on either propane or electricity. To turn it on, simply push the on button here. It's going to come on. You're going to notice an A with an electrical sign come up, and then it switches to the propane drop. So what that's indicating is the fridge is in automatic mode, which means it's automatically going to search for the electricity first, and if it does not find that, it's going to switch over to propane. We recommend leaving the fridge in automatic mode all the time. That way, if you are plugged in and running off electric and you happen to lose power, it's automatically going to switch over to propane mode for you, so you don't have to worry about any of your food spoiling if you're not around to notice that there's been a loss of power. You can change the mode to run either propane or electric just by pushing the mode button here. This symbol without the A is going to indicate running on electric. You see the fridge has gone red because we don't have power available right now. Or you can switch to the propane drop there to run on propane. You see it's lit again and gone back to green. Not very many occasions you would need to do that unless you were perhaps you have power but you're plugged into a weak breaker or something like that. The element in the fridge can be a little bit of a higher draw, so that may be one reason you would want to select propane rather than auto. I'm just going to switch it back into auto mode here so that it's ready to go for you. There is also some temperature adjustment on here. You can go anywhere from 1 to 5 snowflakes. We usually start it at 3, but you may need to adjust that periodically depending on ambient temperature, how full the fridge is, distance above sea level, all that sort of thing. To turn it off, just push and hold the button for a few seconds. Everything should go off there. This is your propane range. Very simple operation on this. To ignite the burners, turn them to high and turn the sparker. You'll notice all the burners light with the sparker. If you ever need to purge the propane system, oftentimes when you've changed a propane bottle, you can get a little bit of an air bubble in there. The stove is the easiest place to do that. Just come in and turn on the burners, and it's going to allow the propane to flow through the system faster. The other thing on here is the oven. To ignite the oven, you just turn to the flame mode here, and it is also connected to the sparker. Sometimes you need to hold it for a little bit here just to get the propane flowing. Give it a couple seconds here. There we go. You'll see the pilot has lit. You're just going to want to let it heat up for a few seconds here to get the thermocouple up to temperature, at which point you can select whichever temperature you want your oven at, and it will light that way. When you're done using it, you can either turn it back to the flame mode to leave that pilot on, or you can just shut it off completely and relight it the next time. The last thing in here to show you is just the stereo. Note that the stereo does have a couple different zones for speakers. One will control inside and one will control outside speakers. Just make sure that if you are enjoying the stereo system inside the unit, that your outside speakers are turned off. We often find people forget that they can both be on at the same time and maybe having a party inside their trailer and disturbing their neighbors outside. That about concludes it for the Sportsmen 301 BHSE. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call here at Trailblazer RV, or check us out online at www.trailblazerrv.com. Thank you.